大德良，他妈的，那么连个上网路了，嗯，公个么三月给什么学员？
To begin with, I would like to offer you all my greetings and wish that you can all be well. Can you all hear me?
嗯，大德良的，他们的这边继续，你阿不吃药的，
Today is the fifth day of the Arya Chema spring teachings.
学的，
And so, what I would like to speak with you about today is the 13th good deed from Mikyo Dorji's autobiographical verses, Good Deeds. Now, according to the outline from his attendant Sanjay Peldrup's commentary on the good deed, the passage on meditating on relative and bodhicitta has two parts, the meditation and post-meditation. And so among these two, we've already discussed the passage on meditation. And so now we're speaking about taking adversity as the path in the post-meditation. And now this has 10 subtopics. Now we've already been through the first two, the taking rest, running out of supplies as the path, taking harm as the path. We're now on the third, which is taking speech as the path. Now, the stanza on taking speech in the path reads, to bring benefit and happiness to everyone throughout space. I spoke kind words, distinguishing what to do and what to reject. How could I ever, in any situation, say harsh words that would make myself and others circle in confusion? I think of this as one of my good needs. And so there's also a note here, a note on this here. And so this is what is called venerable speech, is what it says. When we talk about venerable speech, this is what we mean. Now, from the past until today, there are many people who say they're Dharma practitioners or lamas, and their main responsibility is to open the eyes of all sentient beings to what should be done and what should not be done. And what that means to opening the eyes of sentient beings to what should be done and what not is to learn what are the things that are appropriate for things to do, the virtuous deeds. What are the unvirtuous deeds that are not worthy of being done? So it's understanding the presentation of what is virtue and unvirtue. So we should be someone who can teach or show what we need to take up and what we need to give up. But no matter whenever it is, there are people who are called lamas, or people who are Dharma practitioners, and many of them in their conduct of body, speech, and mind doesn't appear in the Vinaya, the vehicles. It's not found in the sutras, and it's contradictory to the Abhidhamma. Basically, it kind of transgresses the three baskets of the Buddha's teachings, and it goes beyond the meaning of the teaching. And so, when we find this out, what they do is they use guile or deceit. And even if they don't have any qualities, they pretend they have them. Even if they have faults, they hide them. In order to obscure their faults, they do many different things. And so even if they have faults, they explain them as if they're actually qualities. And they imagine that there is a great purpose in accomplishing pointless acts. They explain in this way. And so for themselves, they say that they're like that themselves. They think they're this way. And they also they do many things that ultimately harm themselves and others, but they think themselves that there is going to be great benefit that comes out of it. So the things that harm themselves and others, they explain in many different ways and say that they're really beneficial. So in brief, they're shrouded in the darkness of ignorance. And they're completely mistaken about what to do and what to give up in this life and this future lives. They misunderstand or incorrectly understand what should be done and what should not be done. And they're given with many names like Lama or Rinpoche or Dharma practitioner. They're given many well-known or famous or prestigious names because, and so they pretend to be that way themselves. And it's not only that they're lying. When they meet people who are similar to them, whether they're lamas or students, so when such people appear, they like it, right? When they're people who do things in the same way as them and think in the same way, they really get along well. And so they then see each other and say, praise each other and say, they say, oh, you're greater than I am, or he's greater than, and they praise each other. And when they praise each other in this way, they try to each, raise each other up to get more fame and fame for each other. And so what they say is, they say to each other, I say, your conduct of body, speech, and mind, or your behavior is really good. That's the way it should be in the Vinaya. You've mastered bodhicitta. You have the great aspects of liberation, the secret mantra. You've got a really broad, vast view, and your meditation experiences are stable. You're really generous. You have very strong intelligence. So they praise each other in this way. They're just lying each other and fooling each other. And so when they're fooling each other, so then if there's someone people who say to them, who kind of know the main point, who understand things, say, well, if you're going to do this like this, it says, this doesn't accord with what the Buddha taught in the scriptures. And what they say is like, oh, no, you just don't understand. Everything the Buddha said, those are just guiding me. They're expedient things. And so then they explain the words of the Buddha in many different ways. And so they kind of stretch the Buddhism in different ways in order to make it fit what they want to do. And another thing they say is that the words of the Buddha are really degenerate time. You can't do things as the Buddha taught, they say. And so for all the practice and study, we should do according to Guru's pith instructions. And so we just primarily follow the Guru's pith instructions. And the reason why we should emphasize the Guru's path and pith instructions is that there's not so much that is difficult to do or that doesn't go with our own way of thinking. So we said, this is the Guru's path and pith instructions. And since they're the Guru, we say, oh, if you do follow my tradition, if you do the way things I do, that it's okay. And they give a kind of really facile explanation of that. And so this is, you just do things according to the Guru's pith instructions, and they deceive everyone, say all that. And say, oh, so it's just enough, it's sufficient to just follow the Guru's pith instructions. And there are many such Gurus. And so when they're explaining these kind of impressive things, then they actually lead many of the faithful people down the wrong paths and deceive many people. However, but for someone like Mikyo Dorje, he never had any actions or intentions to deceive others. He never even thought I should do something like that, or he had no intention of that at all. And so what he thought is that when they teach false dharma, they're leading people down a path that is mistaken for reaching liberation and understanding. So there's no wrong of speech that is more severe than such lies of teaching the incorrect dharma. And so thinking in this way, and so when Mikyo Dorje was teaching the Dharma, you'd say those people who we could say their capacity for higher states of true lessons was awakened, or those who could understand it if you taught according to the Dharma, the people, if the faculties and the capacities of the person were appropriate for them, what he'd do for them, he'd teach the stainless words, the words that he taught according to using the same words that matched those of the scriptures. Basically, primarily he'd use the stainless words of the Buddha and to explain things to the other people. But there are some different types of people who, if taught with words that match the Buddha's scriptures, or if you use many of the words that are taught in the scriptures and in the treatises, then the other person is not going to understand them. And they won't get the main point. And for such people, what he would do is he would sometimes, he taught kind of funny stories, like little anecdotes, and say funny things in order to make people laugh. And then on the side, by doing that, he would give them some understanding of the true Dharma. Sometimes what he would do, though, if other people had some sort of like a fault, felt like a problem or a fault, and he would tell them what it is, and so that they could understand. And so basically, he would use many different, ordinary speech and talking, and just use ordinary ways of speaking, and speak in such a way of using the ordinary ways people understand. And through these methods, then he would give them some understanding of the Dharma. And so, in brief, Mikyo Dorje would say to all people, no matter what level that you think, whether they're great or low, he'll think, what can I do to help them? What can I do to bring them to lasting happiness? So he had this unsullied or the stainless, pure intentions. And so in terms of either the Dharma or society, if there's a fault, he would say if there's a fault, he called a fault the fault. If there's a quality, he called the quality a quality. And so this, so we don't need to speak about in terms of the Dharma. In fact, even in terms about the worldly ways, about being a good person, being an upstanding good person. When he spoke, he would speak very directly to the other person. And speak directly to that person's situation. And he'd say exactly what he thought to that other person. And so by doing this, in any case, Mikyo Dorje, he was very direct. And if someone had a fault, he said, you have these faults. If they have quality, he said, this is a fault. He just speak directly to them. Because he spoke so directly, not only in terms of the Dharma, but in terms of think about the worldly ways of being a good and upstanding person. Sometimes he was like there's the Buddha right before your nose. He would just speak so directly about your faults and qualities are that because of saying this, many people immediately recognize their faults to be faults. And then they realized that the bad actions that previous done, they stopped doing those, and then they began doing good actions. And they're all the previous bad teachers or bad lamas. And so the inauthentic teachers and their teachings and their traditions and their conduct, they kind of immediately just kind of gave it all up and cast it away. Similarly, they could really become clear to understand what are the characteristics of the individuals in the Dharma. They could distinguish the individual from the Dharma and learned about what the crucial points of what it means with the and whether the Dharma is progressing on the path or not. And so because there are such people who had that certainty in their minds, and because they had developed that certainty in their mind, and because they saw the reasons, they developed such wisdom because of this later, they couldn't be deceived by false teachers, scriptures, or logics, or signs of accomplishment. They couldn't be deceived. They couldn't be led down a wrong path. And so, for this reason, Mikyo Dorje himself, the way he often taught people, was very direct. And so, if there's a fault, he said that fault was a fault, and if it's a quality, he said it's a quality. And by speaking this way, either directly or indirectly, sometimes he would be criticizing someone. Sometimes he was kind of joking with things. And so, in many different ways, he brought people to understand the main points of what should be done and what should be done, and brought them to be able to see faults as faults and to see qualities as qualities. And he didn't hold back at all when he was teaching or giving advice. Because he was doing this, there were people who had actual faith in Mikyo Dorje. And so the people who had the eye of prajna of knowing what should be done and what should not be done, they thought that of Mikyo Dorje, that from the bottom of their hearts, they thought that he's someone who, they thought that he was someone who thought from the bottom of their heart, what can he do to help them? He thought compassionately of them. He had this compassion. Not only did he have this compassion, he could when he taught what should be taken up and what should be given up, what actions should be done and which ones should be avoided, he spoke very directly. And he was able to distinguish what is Dharma and non-Dharma. And so many people said, oh, he's amazing, like the great being, the Sakya Pandita. So many people praised him in this way. But there were other people who weren't like that. So some of these people, their minds were kind of were controlled by the 8 dharmas. There's some gurus like this, or lords, or politicians, or rinpoches, or monastics who are fake and deceptive, who were they're called monastics or venerable, but they actually were just being deceptive. Some people who had grudges in the mind, but in their external appearance, they pretended to be good. And I saw those people who are called by the name scholars, but actually what they really did, they became very glib about explaining the words of the text, and were called scholars for that reason. There are people who are really overly bold and audacious people. And there are people who seemed like they were very honest and good people, but actually they're really shameless and people who had really bad habits. And so these are people who called by the names practitioners. There were also some people who said that they were actually very, very simple yogis. Actually, they're the kind of actually weak and incompetent. And so there are such people. So in brief, there are many people who are called by the name Dharma practitioners, but actually have no wish for liberation or samsara. What they said is that this incarnation of the karma, he's like, talks a lot, but he ignores everything. He looks down on everyone else. He's just trying to bring everyone down. He's always criticizing people or reprimanding people. In particular, people who have faith in the Dharma. He tries to condemn these people. He tries to eliminate those eliminate their faith. And the reason why they say this is that the Migyo Dorje has so many exaggerations about all the Dharma and the individuals, the Dakpo and the Shampa Kaju, the Sakya and the Gelugpa Nyingma and true lineages. So whether we talk about the gurus or whether they're lineages, he's saying many exaggerations about all of their Dharma. And so when he's objecting to all of their schools and criticizing them, if he has a particular reason for it, that's one thing. But if he doesn't have that reason or purpose in saying all such things, then it's the karma of rejecting the Dharma. So there were many people at that time, during Migyo Dorje's time, who said this. And so now when we think about it, how it really is, if someone like Migyo Dorje, in terms of his character, when he's teaching and instructing his students and giving them advice, and Ashoda is speaking appropriately and practicing and speaking appropriately for the Dharma. So for those people who practice the pseudo-Dharma, then they say that he has the karma of rejecting Dharma and criticize him in that way. And who make false accusations. And it's the same as what's said in the Prajnaparamita Sutra in 100,000 lines, because what it says in there, that when an irreversible bodhisattva is teaching the Dharma, they're fools who will criticize him. And no matter how many much they criticize him, this will actually increase the practice of the irreversible bodhisattva to that extent. And this is said in the Prajnaparamita, the long Prajnaparamita Sutras. And likewise, it also says in the Prajnaparamita Sutras that some fools and people who don't know their main points will say, this is not the Dharma, this is not the Vinaya, this is not the Buddhist teachings. And they get a little bit overly bold. They get too audacious themselves, and they speak in this way. Many such people will come in the future, it is said. But even though many will appear in the future, the more they criticize and try to bring down the bodhisattvas the courage of the bodhisattvas will increase. Their diligence will increase, it is said. So in brief, basically, the point we need to understand is that many people make a little of criticisms of bodhisattvas and great beings. And the reason they're making the criticism is that when the authentic gurus and the great beings are teaching the Dharma, since when they're teaching the Dharma, they have to do it properly according to the Dharma because they're practicing according to the Dharma. Now, this often it hits their hidden faults, and because these individuals are unable to practice the Dharma properly themselves, and so when those people see someone else practice the Dharma, then they get a little embarrassed, and so they get the kind of a little attachment or aversion to towards the bodhisattvas, and they begin to view them as enemies. Say, that's not right. This is bad. And they'll say many different such things. And that kind of person, or what they're called in the sutras and the tantras, is the Mara of the divine child. We haven't talked about among the four Maras, we talk about the Mara of the divine child. So we talk about the Mara of the divine child, that's what we mean. So this is a sort of person we call the Mara of the divine child. This is what is said discussed in the histories. And so for that reason, We need to be careful of such people. When we talk about Mara, as I've said before, it doesn't necessarily mean something who has a dark complexion and has horns on their face. That's not what we mean. When you look at it, when you immediately understand something frightening that we normally see, it's not that we can't recognize it as something like that. And so that's, if we think in that way, then the way we're thinking is just too limited. In fact, a Mara is that it prevents us from achieving liberation and omniscience. Most of them are the people around us. It's usually people who are often around us. They're the ones who are the most dangerous. For example, our parents and siblings. There's a danger that they'll be such sort of a Mara. There's a possible that among the people that there are Maras within the people around who are practicing the Dharma. And basically the people you believe, the people you like, the people you think are good, even among such people, it's possible there might be a Mara. And that sort of a Mara, I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm not saying they're bad people, but they don't have any power themselves because they're controlled by their afflictions. They've also been possessed by the demon, controlled by the demon, because they're controlled by the Mara. And so they end up being doing what the Mara tells them, and they have no control, and they cause harm to other people. And so the person is like the Mara has remote control, and once you've come under the remote control, and the Mara gives you all the commands, then you end up going do something to harm another person, right? And those are the type of Maras we need to be careful of. It's not like some sort of a Mara, some sort of external thing, something in some sort of a forbidding house. I think that's just shows that we don't really know how to understand it. So next, another important point we need to understand is, as you all know, among all of the different karmapas, the one with the longest collected works, the one who wrote the most works, is. Can you actually answer that immediately? So who has the longest collected works? If we look at the histories, would be the second Karmapa, Karmapakshi. The second Karmapakshi, if we talk about in terms of how large his collected works was, it was said is the same size as the Kanjura. So it's like in the Kanjura. Sometimes in the Kanjura, some have 103 or 104. So in any case, it's more than 100 volumes. And so basically, it said that Karmapakshi had a complete works that was the same size as the Kanjura. This is what it says in the history. This is what's written in the histories. These days, we no longer have all that. In the past, we had the junior Changzi, the junior steward, Changzi Lodritashi, he was called. He was the junior. When he was at Tsopa Monastery, he was the one who looked through this old Panzalam. Now, the old library at Tsopa was torn down during the Cultural Revolution, but during that, in the Karmapakshi, there is collected works of Karmapakshi that it goes from the bottom all the way up to the top. This the height of the body. This is what he said. So many different volumes, but these days, I don't even know if there are even 10 left. That's all that are left. Now after Karmapakshi, the one who has the longest collected works is, if you say it's Mikkyö Dorje, I think there's nothing wrong with saying that. Mikkyö Dorje himself, from the time he was young, wrote many amazing treatises and songs, particularly when he came to the age of 20, he wrote a commentary on the Vinaya Sutras. And then when he was 23, he wrote the great commentary on the Prajnaparamita, the rest for the yogis. And then he wrote a commentary on the Sanskrit grammar by Kalapa. At the age of 26, he wrote the long commentary on the Vinaya Sutras, and he wrote his at the age of 27, he wrote his long commentary on the Abhidharma, and later he wrote the commentary on Mahayana, or Chariot of the Practiced Cities. And in this way, he wrote the many commentaries on the sutras. In terms of Tantra, he wrote commentaries on the Mahayana and other Tantras. And he wrote many other such explanations, mandala rituals and sadhanas. And he also wrote many different instructions that teach the main points of the practice of the Mahayana. So in brief, if we look at the collected works of Mikyo Dorje, there are like over the 20s thick volumes. In the past, when I was in Tibet, I have found a few volumes of Mikyo Dorje Sutras, and these are really huge volumes. They're so big that you could, like, someone could hardly carry them themselves. And anyways, there are these. There are like over 20 such huge volumes. Forget about the others. When you think about if we think about his poetic style, he had wrote something about the type of ornament, a type of figure of speech that's called the difficult ornaments. So there are three different on the text on poetry. They have three different types. There's one of the different types of ornaments in poetry that is called the difficult ornaments. Now, I can't explain it. If I explain it right away, you won't all understand it. But basically, what is it? In the middle there is in the middle there is a one word, and then around there are different things, and you can read it forwards and backwards. You can read it from the beginning to the end, or from the end to the beginning. In either way, you can read it. So you can read it from the beginning to the end. You can read it from the end to the beginning. And there are so many such amazing texts. The reason why it's that difficult is because it's very difficult to write. And so Mikyo Dorje himself was also very, this shows that Mikyo Dorje himself is very skilled at writing difficult poetic forms. And so there's so many volumes in his collected works, and so that it's not just that you can count the number of volumes, also in terms of their content. If we think about in terms of his works, in terms of their content, later many composers often would use earlier commentators' works as their models. So this is what happened, but Mikyo Dorje himself never just followed the words of earlier scholars. In terms of the words of this, in terms of the supporting text, he did a lot of very profound research. And particularly in his great commentaries on Middle-way, Prajnaparamita, Vinaya, and Abhidharma, you're thinking about their explanation of the text, their explanations of difficult points, or the general discussions. They're really complete and perfect. And they were able to bring out the points that emphasize their own particular philosophy. So these commentaries on the great texts are not only in the constant tradition, but they're also like common jewels for all of the Dakpo Kagyu schools. And so these great Kagyu commentaries on the great texts, and so are like the representatives or are of the great commentaries on these five texts. Likewise, in particular, his commentaries on Abhidharma and Vinaya are often used as supplementary read in the Gelugpa monastic colleges. So many senior geshes have told me this. later, if I have time, I would like to speak about the particular qualities and features of these great commenters in the middle way, Prajnaparamita, Vinaya, and Abhidharma. So how are they how are they particular? I'd like to speak about that. But today, the main thing I'd like to speak about, I'd like to show today is like one of the shorter of his texts. I'd like to give you a little introduction to a shorter text, but I think we'll take a break at this point. It's better to take the break here. And then we will continue. Now, I was mentioning before, there are many works by Mikyo Dorje. And among all these many works, I would like to discuss one of his shorter ones. Now, what this text is called is presenting the origins, the undisputed teacher, and teachings. A response to the objections regarding the ancient translation secret mantra. And the content of this text is that there was someone who said that the Nyingma secret mantra is not real Dharma, and who said this and to try to prevent this. So he set out to prove that this is wrong, prove that the Nyingma is the real Dharma, the Buddha. So it's a question of like objections and responses. And so I'd like to. There are some old manuscripts of this responses to objections that I had. So I'll just show you a couple of pictures of them. So I'll show them to you now. So these are they. So these are two old manuscripts. And the top one is that one. I got from the Drepung Library. And how we know it's from Drepung is it's got this sign, these leads. It's written out. So out means that it's an external text, which means that most of these texts are when during the time of the fifth Dalai Lama, the Mongol armies destroyed the Kongpo temple. They took many of the texts at that temple and they brought it to Drepung. And then they made an index of all of them, or a catalog of all of them. And then all of them, they put this sign on all of them. And see, these are ancient manuscripts. See, they're very, very old manuscripts. I think they're over 360 years old. So so they have a history of over 360 years. Now, the older one, or the lower one, I'm not sure where it's from, Drepung or another place, I can't say, but the one from above, the above one is clearly from the Drepung Library. No, so among all the different works of Mikyo Dorje, why is it that I need to take this response to objections, which is also called the Seeds of Honesty? And one of the reasons why I need to introduce is that it's got a particular connection with our topic today. And a second reason is that this work, the Seeds of Honesty, and that because of this work, there was later modern, for the later scholars, it had a considerable influence on later scholars. And for that reason, I thought it was important to give an explanation of it. If it didn't have any particular connection to today's topic, then there wouldn't be much need to speak about it. And so now, in general, Before we speak about this work of Mikyo Dorje, we need to talk about his character. It's important for us to understand this first. And so in order if we understand what his character was like, then only then can we really understand his works. Can we understand the connection between his works and the way he thought? And we can see the direct connection. And so there are many different particular qualities of this. So generally, when you think about a Karmapa Mikyo Dorje, what his character was, he was really blunt and direct. And whatever he thought, he just said it directly to whatever he thought to anyone else without holding anything back. He never held back. Whatever he thought, he just said it immediately. He didn't really think about whether the other person would like it or whether they'd feel hurt by it. And so, because this is character, when he was writing a text, if there was something that he thought was not illogical, no matter how great he would, no matter how well known the scholars of the past were, he did make objections to them, raise refutations of them, no matter who they were there. Now, so if you look at this and you're not familiar with this work, then you might think that he was a lama who had a really strong sectarian bias. So you might think this because he's objecting to all the different, making objections to all the gurus, no matter who they were. But in actuality, someone who thinks this isn't actually really familiar with Mikyo Dorje. He's not familiar with his character as someone who is not used to Mikyo Dorje. And the way we know this is that, for example, when he was writing texts, he would look at whether something matched the intention of the text or not. And if it didn't, and if he thought it did not match the intention of the text, he didn't care whether it was their own tradition or another tradition. He just naturally, no matter whether, he would just make an objection to the Lama, whether his own tradition or another, in particular. So then, for his own root guru, Sanjay Nyempa, he never made any explanation. Other than that, all of the gurus with him he studied texts, such as Karma Trinlepa and Drulmotashi Weser. He made objections to them too. They're his lama. They're people whom he studied the text with. They're the people whom he studied, right? They're the lamas whom he studied philosophy. And when he compared their thought to the thought of the text, if he said the way they said something didn't match with the intent of the text, he would make an objection to it. And he would also make many refutations of other well-known Kagyalamas from that time, such as the fourth Shamar Chukidrapa. And similarly, that Shamar's teacher, Galush Shinupal, he'd even object to what they said. And likewise, there are also people who had a really great affinity for the Karmapas. And particularly those were the people who had great conviction, people such as the seventh Karmapa, such as the Panchen Shakya Chokten. He made a lot of objections to Panchen Shakya Chokten. So for that reason, if Mikyo Dorje were so biased towards their own tradition, his own group, and so and had a really strong sectarian attachment to the masters of his own lineage, he wouldn't do this. But that's not how it was. The main thing he primarily took for the basis whether something matched the meaning, the intent of the text or not. And he didn't worry about whether it's his own or other. And if he thought if there's a reason, he'd even cite quotations from his own. And he'd say, I even wrote a text about this before, he would say. So Mikyo Dorje would even cite his own texts. And so he had a really particular character. So in brief, when he was writing commentaries on the text, between the text and between the Dharma, the individual, he considered the Dharma the most important. He didn't consider the individual to be important at all. So in any case, all of the works that in which Minkyur Dorje comments on the text, he makes objections to Sakya Penta, to the Dolpo, Bodong Panchen, to Jade Tsongkhapa, and many other great Tibetan scholars. He raised objections to all of them. So he raised the objections, but when you think the primary reason why he was objecting this, when he was investigating and researching the view, he saw the difference in the thoughts. Now, because the scholars have different thoughts, and because I have different thought, they say this is reasonable and this is not reasonable. And so we can see that analysis of what's reasonable or not. So when he's raising objections, it's not a question of like a worldly way of liking or disliking. And the way we can know this is from text written by Minkyur Dorje himself, to praise the five great beings who spread the treatises in Tibet. This is a praise. In this praise, he mentions Bodongpa, he mentions Dolpopa and Lord Tsongkhapa, and he praises all of them. And so when he was raising the objections, he was able to object, but when he was praising them, he was able to praise them. He wasn't something who unilaterally objected to someone or categorically objected to someone. Like in our worldly way of thinking about things. So because if the people you don't like, it's just completely not liking them. It wasn't like that. Likewise, if we look at his collected songs, we talk about his collected songs, like when you're talking about the philosophical texts, these are things that you have to use your intelligence and examine with reason, see if something is reasonable or not. And because when you're doing those, then you can see using your own intelligence. And when you're using your own intelligence, and you follow the path of logic with your own intelligence, then if something's does not fit with the logic, then if you think that they're not that they don't fit with the logic, then you make an objection. But the collected songs are different. It's primarily thinking about the feelings in his mind. Primarily teaches one feelings and what you normally we think about things. And so this is what is made most clear in the collected songs. And so if we look at the collected songs, we see that Minkyur Dorje, we can really see what Minkyur Dorje's character was like and how he had faith for the great Tibetan lamas of the past and what he thought about them. It's not like he saw them as an enemy or an opponent. He was not sectarian. But one thing that's really curious is that, as I said before, Minkyur Dorje raised objections to many Sakya lamas, and with the Gelugpa, he made many objections and refutations of Lord Tsongkhapa's view of the middle way. But it's not really one of the Minkyur Dorje objected to the Sakya, or that he objected to the Gelug. But it is quite frequently said that he made refutations and objections to the Nyingma. And so for that reason, the reason for this comes down to is related to this text that I mentioned before. As I mentioned before, the one I was talking about before, it's related to that. And the reason for this is around the time when Minkyur Dorje was about 46. So he passed away when he passed away when he was the age of 48, right? So therefore, around the time when he was about 46, maybe about 2 years before he passed away, there was an event that occurred, or a situation that occurred, is that there was a letter that was purported to be written by Minkyur Dorje criticizing the Nyingma Tantra that circulated through all areas of Vitsang. It was everywhere. And it said, and there's objections to the secret mantra of Vajrayana that was said to have been written by Minkyur Dorje. And so it was spread all throughout Utsang. Then many people began to criticize. It became like the the grounds for people to cross him. They said, oh, he's criticizing the Ningpa. And so it became well known among many people. And so many people began to criticize Mikyo Dorje for it. Now, if the actual essence is, did Mikyo Dorje write these refutations of the Nyingma or not? If he did write them, why did he make these refutations? What are the reasons why he refuted them? But if he did not write these objections, then how did this letter come to be? If something Mikyo Dorje didn't do something, if this didn't write it, but if there's a letter that says that's purported to be written by Mikyo Dorje, how did that happen? So this is the question that comes up. And so to understand this, in order to know this, we need to look at the beginning of the text by Mikyo Dorje. And so the manuscript is above, it's very long, right? So when I put it there, there's no way I can make it bigger. But the red text in the ones that I've underlined and read in the manuscript are written in red below. And so what it says at the beginning is, should I read this? Maybe it's better if I read this. Because of my name, Karmapa, there's someone who said taken my name, Karmapa, and written a Mikyo Dorje, and written a false refutation of false Matunde as if it had been written by Tibetan Mikyo Dorje. If I do not understand the name or purpose of what individual has done this, but this has caused many people in Wu-Tsang to view us with hatred as people who chatter out of wrong views, and who say many insulting words. In order to prevent misdeeds from such increasing, I shall speak to this. So when we look at this, it becomes what it says is that he doesn't know what and understand the name or purpose of whatever individual has done this. So someone is pretending to be Mikyo Dorje. Someone has stolen his name and written this text. It was not something that Mikyo Dorje wrote himself. This is very clearly. If we look at this this passage, we immediately know it. But he says he doesn't understand or doesn't know who wrote this. So I do not know, I do not understand who has written this. So I don't know what his name is, he's saying. But he's pretending to Mikyo Dorje, he's stealing Mikyo Dorje's and written it seems. So now if we continue to look further down in the text, what is written in this text is at the beginning it says, written by the Karmapa Nyingma from conversations of Tedro Lama Dzogchenpa. So it says that he wrote it from the conversations of Tedro Lama Dzogchenpa. And at the end it says, during the Tibetan month of the year of the rat, may it be virtuous. This is what it says. And so this shows that everything from beginning to end is false. And the reason why it's all completely false is if we during the male wood year of the rat, I was in Yemo. That's true that I was there. I was in Yemo, but at that time, in that place of Tedro, there wasn't any well-known Dzogchen Lama. If you say that this is written by a Tedro Lama Dzogchenpa, it's a complete lie. Because that's what that place of, there was no Lama Dzogchenpa of Tedro. There was no Lama such as that. There was no important Lama, there was no one there like that. So to say it was written for him, then that's a slanderous lie. Now here he gives us, what he says here is, so the milieu of the wood rat is definitely, he says the milieu of the wood rat. That's what it says, right? It says the milieu of the wood, and I think that perhaps this is a copying mistake, because the reason that Mikyo Dorje was born in the fire rabbit year, and the way he passed away is the wood tiger year. And so between the fire rabbit year and the wood tiger year, there was not even a wood rat year, a word with that same element in animal. There's not even one. And so this milieu of the wood rat was probably not the wood rat, it's probably the water rat. When you talk about the water rat, is the year when Mikyo Dorje was 46. It was when he was 46 in the 9th cycle. Now, the reason for saying this is that the feast, when you think about when did he write this, it was it is clearly said in the Feast for Scholars by Pao Trengwa that he wrote it in the water ox year. And even so, it seems that it must have written this exegetion not too long after the letter of the objections to Nyingma. So the time when the letter was written, it was probably written, must have been wood in the water year. It was probably in 1552 at the time. And at that time, Mikyo Dorje was 46. Then 2 years later, at the age of 48, in 1554, he passed away. And so for this one, it says the male year of the wood rat, I think is a mistake. It must have been It must have been the year of the water rat. And if we continue looking here, in at the end of the response to the objections, there are some verbs. I don't need to read these all right now. So those are the verses. Now, the meaning of these statements is that the main point of them, if we when someone else borrows his name or steals his name, and someone stole his name, and you wrote this objections to the Nyingma, and the reason what this came down to is that someone else was jealous of Mikyo Dorje, right? Someone else got jealous of Mikyo Dorje. Mikyo Dorje had a very widespread activity, and there's someone who didn't want to see this happen, and so they wanted to do something to cause some harm to Mikyo Dorje's reputation. And this is what is said in the colophon. He also talks about the place where he did it, where he wrote it, and who was with him, who helped him, who was the scribe who wrote down. That was Karma Trungpa Jigme De. So Karma Trungpa Jigme De was so for Mikyo Dorje, there's the Lama Karma Trungpa and a student Karma Trungpa. This is something we need to understand. Now, when you say Karma Trungpa, if we don't know whether it's talking about the teacher or the student, we sometimes get mixed up. So when we talk about Lama Karma Trungpa, this was the Lama from whom he studied the philosophical texts. This is someone who had he was an upholder of this textual tradition of the Sakyapa and the Kagyu, because he was first studied in the Sakya tradition, and later he became a student of Chodo Gyatso. And he was really very, very influential in spreading the Kagyu tradition of teaching. And the second one was the student Karma Trungpa. So actually, there wasn't just one; there were two students named Karma Trungpa. And so the two students, Karma Trungpa, and so this student Karma Trungpa was the second one, and the student Karma Trungpa was the second. So Karma Trungpa was the teacher, and the second was a student. And that second, and there were two who were the Karma Trungpas. So the first was named, it was called Sunam Tenzin. So Sunam Tenzin was at Surpo Monastery. And the second Karma Trungpa was called Karma Trungpa Jigme Deba. And another name was his main name was what is was called Pekar. And he was a really, in particular, skilled in poetry. And Mikyo Dorje was also very skilled in poetry. And Mikyo Dorje said that he was also skilled in poetry. And he was also very well known in the Vajrayana ritual and all the rituals of the Vajra masters. And then the second Karma Trinipa was also was praised by the great fifth Dalai Lama. And so here's the one who was serving him now, the scribe who was a Kamatuneda the Pengar Losao. So this is the one who is praised by the fifth Dalai Lama. Then later, what we think about is when you have that. So Miki Dorje says very clearly in his own response to the objections, the seeds of honesty. And this is also explained very clearly by his students. For example, first of all, in Pao Tzu Cheng was a Feast for Scholars, there's a very long biography of the Karmapa Miki Dorje. And what this says is that at this time he was invited to Jambaling, where the Yard Gyepa already made offerings with offerings of devotion. Now, at that time, there was a letter slandering the Nyingma Dharmata that had taken Miki Dorje's name in its colophon that was very that displeased all the Nyingma, and so as a response, he wrote the Seeds of Honesty. So when Miki Dorje was staying at Jambaling, at that time, there was the letter saying it was written by Miki Dorje. Began to circulate in society. And when this happened, then all the Nyingmapas lost faith in Miki Dorje. And so for this reason, Miki Dorje wrote a response to the objections, the Seeds of Honesty. In any case, there are sort of 2 points that are said here. From the one perspective, the objection was written by someone who had stolen Miki Dorje's name. It was not written by Miki Dorje. And the second is that Miki Dorje himself wrote a response to those objections. So these are 2 points. Now, also when Pang Tsingma, when he was 53 years old, he wrote a treatise purifying wrong views. And what it says in this text is, there's someone who there's a letter borrowing the name of Miki Dorje, and this appeared in that, and because of it appearing, then all those who had faith in the Nyingma Tantra lost faith in Miki Dorje, and so for this reason, Miki Dorje himself wrote this a very detailed and long response, The Seeds of Honesty. And so it's a remarkable, so read it in there. And so it's in Pao Tzu Cheng was Feast for Scholars, and also in his treatise Purifying Wrong Views. And it says that all of these, that Miki Dorje gave a response to all the objections to the Nyingma that were circulating in Tibet. And at that time, it says that the letter objecting to the Nyingma that purported to be by Miki Dorje was a fake. And is saying that Miki Dorje wrote the Seeds of Honesty as a response to the objections. Likewise, one of Miki Dorje's main student was the fifth Shamar Khentrul Yenla. And Shamar Khentrul Yenla wrote a catalog of the complete works of Miki Dorje, right? And within this catalog, and this text, The Seeds of Honesty, presenting the undisputed origins of the teaching, that it's very clearly listed there. And it's continued within his among his works. And so what it said, this shows that the letter of the objections is fake, and Miki Dorje wrote the response to it. This is very clear. So basically, when we take because of these events that I've just mentioned, what we can know from them is that Mikyo Dorje and his disciples said that the letter of objections to the Nyingma was not written to the Nyingma, was a fake, and they said this not just once, but they said it many times. The Dharma history of Future Scholar is a very famous Dharma history, and it's a very famous Dharma history, but still, many of the scholars of Mikyo Dorje's time, or those who came after, primarily those of the ancient Nyingma tradition, took it that these objections were written they took it as a given that these objections were written. The letter of objections were written by Mikyo Dorje. They didn't have any suspicion about whether or not, they didn't even think about whether it could have been written by Mikyo Dorje. They took it as a given that it was written by Mikyo Dorje. And they had gentle responses, they had very strident. They gave various different types of responses. So as I mentioned before, in Tibet, the scholars of the ancient indigenous, the earlier and the later ones, didn't even begin to doubt whether it was Mikyo Dorje or not who wrote this letter criticizing the ancient Nyingma. They took it as a given that it was written by Mikyo Dorje, and they gave polite responses, and they gave strident. They gave strident responses, and they gave various different responses. The fact that they didn't have any doubts about the fact that they didn't even mention this, they didn't even doubt that it was written by Mikyo. I think, why is this? I think there's several reasons for it. I think one reason is that it's one possible reason that these scholars they probably didn't even see the response to the objections written by the Seeds of Faith written by Mikyo Dorje. If they'd seen it, then they'd seen it very clearly. Mikyo Dorje said that he did not write it, that it was a fake. And so for that reason, most of these scholars did not actually see Mikyo Dorje's response to the objections. The objections that they were said to be written to by Mikyo Dorje, but they didn't see the responses, and so they say, "Oh, the objections written by Mikyo Dorje." They didn't even begin to suspect whether or not begin to doubt whether or not it was written by Mikyo Dorje, because it's very clear they didn't see Mikyo Dorje's response to this, and as if they had looked at it, they would have seen clearly that it wasn't written by Mikyo Dorje, and so either. So it's quite possible that they didn't see the response to the objections. So that's one reason. Alternatively, at that time, this letter of objections that started circulating to the Nyingma that started circulating to Madhu is said to be by Mikyo Dorje. And so many people think, oh, this is a way to show off their own scholarly skills. What is like an opportunity to really clarify the teachings of the Nyingma. And so whether or not it was Mikyo Dorje who wrote those objections, they took it as like the basis, the ground that Mikyo Dorje wrote it, and they wrote the response. That's also possible, right? The reason for that is that Mikyo Dorje was a very well-known Lama of that time. And so if you can make a response of your own to the objections that he raises, then you get a little bit of get a name from that, right? And you get a little bit, if you think this also can bring some benefit to the Nyingma teachings, it could also bring a little bit into benefit to profit for oneself. And so they kind of took it as on the basis that Mikyo Dorje had written them and wrote so you say that there is a benefit for writing this for the responses like that. That's another potential reason. So either it's possible that they might not have seen the Mikidorji response existence, or if that they know had seen it but pretended not to, and then wrote their response. This is also possible. So if you really know this, we can't really say exactly what the situation was, but in order to know that, what we would need to do is we take like the response to objections by Mikidorji and the responses by later scholars to the letter purporting to be written by Mikidorji, and then to see what are the similarities and dissimilarities. Now, did they take the Mikidorji's responses as like a model for their own responses or not? This is something we can't do right away unless we do a lot of research. So next, what I'd like to say, I'd like to talk about how the responses that the earlier and later Nyingma masters responded to the objections in the letter that was purported to be Mikidorji, how they responded to it. And the first was Tukul Natsorandro. And he was at that time a very well-known Natsorandro was a great scholar and meditator. He was also one of the gurus of Shama Kuntala. And so he wrote this in the day after, or the year after Mikidorji passed away. In that year, the 1555, he wrote a text called The Luminous Dharma Expanse, a response to questions posed by the young Mikidorji in an official letter. And so in here he takes it for granted that Mikidorji was the author of the objections to the Nyingma. Now, and also about 3 or so years after Mikidorji passed away, there was Yakta Duzin Chirap Gyatso. And he wrote a text called The String of Jewels, Responses to Questions on the Origins of the Buddha Dharma. What it says in this is that there are 26 objections raised in the letter objecting to the Nyingma that was purported to be written by Mikidorji. He wrote an answer to each of the 26 questions, respond to them in depth. And in some this way, it becomes like also a Dharma history of the Nyingma Dharma. And so later, when Kyabje Dudjom Rinpoche wrote his own Dharma history, he cited many passages from the Yakte Dharma history. Likewise, there's the Dharma history written by Guru Tashi called the Gute Dharma history. And what this is called is that at one point in the past, I did see a Dharma history seen as a Yakte Dharma history said and written by Dulzin Chinra Gyatso, but I have not obtained it my own at this time. And so that what he was saying is that the text by Yate Chinra Gyatso was a Dharma history of the Nyingma tradition. It's a very old Dharma history and a very source, and it's an important one. Now, Yakta's response to the letter is the one big difference between his and others is that he does not accept that. So most of the other scholars said that it was everyone's accept that it was written by Mikidorji, and what it says in the response to the objections itself. I don't need to read everything from the beginning. And it said that here that Mikidorji is indivisible from the wisdom and expanse of Padmasambhava, but someone with a sectarian motivation wrote a fake letter with misconceptions about the teachings of the Kagyu Nyingma. Tedro Dzogchen was taken as a target in this text disputing the Tantra's practice and Samaya substance of the ancient translation school. And because I've seen this, I've written The String of Jewels, a history of the Buddha's teachings because of seeing it. So basically, the reason why he wrote this text is that he saw this fake document purporting to be written by Mikidorji, And it was circulating widely in the States. And when he saw it, he wrote this letter, he said. Likewise, when the one who encouraged or requested him to write this was actually a disciple of Mikhail Dorje. He was a student of Mikhail Dorje's. And he was there was the four Tsulk monasteries, and there's one called Tsulk Genjun Gan. These upheld the tradition of Kashmiri Panchen Shaka Shid. So this student's name was Panchen Ngon Chugyo. And what he said is that this letter refuting the Nyingma was not a letter by Mikhail Dorje. It was not written by Mikhail Dorje, but because of it, many people say it was written by Mikhail Dorje, and they take it as it, and they get unhappy about this, and they accumulated the karma of rejecting the Dharma. So he said he should write a Dharma history response to the objections to to clarify the teachings of the Kagyu and the Nyingma. Another person encouraged this is Yajap Punchen. So this is what Yajap Punchen said was that you should write a history of the Dharma with the response to questions that would benefit the teachers of Buddhism and that would be pleasing to Mikhail Dorje. And so for this reason, we can see that this letter objecting to Nyingma was not written by Mikhail Dorje. So what we can understand from this is that at that time, that the people who knew Mikhail Dorje and who were actual connections to Mikhail Dorje believed that this letter objecting to the Nyingma was not written by Mikhail Dorje. Later, after Mikhail Dorje passed away, 22 years after Mikhail Dorje passed away, Soktolpa Lodro Gyaltsen wrote a text called The Thunder, Scripture and Logic, a response to the Gyawan Karmapa Mikhail Dorje's letter questioning the secret Nyingma Singama mantra. So he wrote this text. And so he gives responses to it from the beginning to the end. Not only does he respond to every point in it, he takes it as its basis that Mikhail Dorje wrote the letter objecting to the Nyingma. But he said that the reason why Mikhail Dorje did these is to encourage the Nyingmas to engage in listening, contemplation, and meditation. It's the Mikhail Dorje thought, well, what can I do to help the Nyingma? How can I help them? And therefore he wrote the text. And what he says here is, in the Nishin Gyal Mikhail Dorje's letter about the conversations of Children Lama and Dzogchen, there are several figurative situations in scripture. In the letter written at Nudun, said in these days in the north of Uru, the Chertan Changla Chen and other emanations of the Maras. So in seeing as such as there's much view in this, and such things matter questioning or questions are questions of eliminating doctrinal doubts about the Nyingma posed in a deep and vast way that's difficult to fathom. They're given to inspire Nyingmas to put effort into listening, contemplating, and meditating. If we completely integrate them into our being, we will determine all the difficult points of the secret mantra. So if you look at this, what it is saying is that when Mikhail Dorje is written as a thing, is making the refutation, can I help the Nyingmas? If we can actually give a good response to the objections by Mikhail Dorje, and we can understand the main points, and then we can refine and improve the teachings of Samyak Newton and be most beneficial to the Nyingma teachings. Likewise, this Soktolpa Lodro Gyaltsen also wrote in his response to the objections that Soktolpa himself had seen before he wrote his own response to the objections. He had seen 3 responses written by other authors. He'd seen these 3 responses, but within them, they didn't really understand what Mikhail Dorje's point was, what his thought was, and what he's trying to say. And so they're basically using sarcastic words and tries to denigrate Mikhail Dorje. And there's no point to those, he said. This is what he said. So saying that before him there was, he's saying that there were no sarcastic words of trying to bring Mikyo Dorje. He's saying that because he's saying that Mikyo Dorje made these objections in order to benefit the Nyingma, and so in understanding this way, he made his responses. So that's that. Later, in this beginning of the 17th century, there is a liberation story of Sachen Losai Gyaltso written by the fifth Dalai Lama, the great fifth Dalai Lama. And so what this says is that, so I don't need to read, I'll say the meaning. It's saying that Mikyo Dorje, sometimes he says that the Mikyo Dorje is false Dharma, and sometimes he has like the Seichu Puja of Guru Chongwa. This is called the lowered Terka. And he has this puja at the encampment. And likewise, when he met Jigong Sokun, so he took this Jigong, he took his ritual dagger and other tantric robes, and he put them on his head and said respectfully, saying, I would like to be like this at some point in the future, and showed respect. So these events, likewise, at that time, there was the sort of a king of Tibet at that time, the Nedong Lord. There was a letter that he wrote to Mikyo Dorje that said, these days in the North Voodoo, the Terten Chandoch and other emanations of the Mars. So it's basically written. Likewise, he said, conversation with the Lama Tedrowa. So this is that letter criticizing the Nyingma. So he did all of these things. So this is like it's a diverse words and expressions of someone who's not in his right mind. And so what this shows is that Mikyo Dorje is something he objects to the government, and something he does treat so well. So he's not stable at all. He is just a completely fickle person. He says various different things. And so for that reason, Sachen Losai did not have much faith in Mikyo Dorje. He thought that they're very strange. Sometimes he objects to the Nyingma, and sometimes he says they're good. He's very fickle. He's not stable, and because it doesn't feel, and there's no, and the fifth Dalai Lama says that it's understandable that he didn't feel faith in him. So this is that the fifth Dalai Lama took it as for granted that Mikyo Dorje had written objections to the Nyingma, and that it was he who wrote the letter objecting. Likewise, also from the fifth Dalai Lama's record of teachings. This is a very well-known record of teachings, a list of all the teachings that he received. It says, Karmapa Bhante Dorje's instructions on the outer cycle of Ati and verse seem to have produced an amazing experience of imprints awakened by the Nyingma Gyaltso. It is not at all like the Mikyo Dorje said to be his responsibility reincarnation. So he calls the Rangjung Dorje the omniscient Rangjung Dorje. He's praising him, he's calling him omniscient. And he wrote a verse Karma Nyingtik cycle. And he wrote this Nyingtik cycle in verse. And if we look at this, so we can say that he was a great experience that was produced by coming in Gyaltso, and was awakened by this. But when he wrote these, and because when he sees that there's really something really amazing there when he read them. So Rangjung Dorje, if you say that Mikyo Dorje is the reincarnation, that he couldn't possibly be the Rangjung Dorje. They're not at all the same. And the reason for this is that when you look at Rangjung Dorje, you can see the signs that he is an emanation of Ngenlam Gyaltso Cholang. And so in this way, you can see that he was unhappy with these objections that were said to be raised by Mikyo Dorje to the Nyingma school. Likewise, in the 18th century, I've talked about the 17th century, so now the 18th century, there was a Tukhan Lobsang Chögyam Nyingma who wrote a crystal mirror of the philosophical schools. And what this says, and so the Gokupa Latse and Drigom Paladin present many proofs that the Nyingma is not pure Dharma. And then following, the Shakya Chokden and Karmapa Mikyo Dorje also follow their lead, objecting to the Nyingma. Basically, It's so this objection to the Nyingma's Mikyo Dorje, he took this as his basis and wrote this text. So this is what he says, right? And then in the 19th century, we've got to the 19th century. So we've gone through the 18th century. Now we've got to the 19th century. There's a Guru Tashi. I've already mentioned the Guru Dharma history. Its actual title is The Ocean of Amazing Stories That Delight the Wise. But if we call it by a short title, we call it the Guru Dharma history. What's written there is that the eighth Karmapa was studying the Tanakh practice cycle from Gyaltsen Tashi Namgyal and practiced them. See, practice Dharma. It's the saying, he's practiced Nima Dharma. He also wrote a son combining the 8 Karmapas, the 8 Shangs, and the 8 forms of Guru Rinpoche. So he wrote this sadhana. And I think this is probably understood as the 4-session Guru Yoga. He described this Nyingma as a school of perception. This master investigated the same man, pretended to refuse some small man, but he wrote this own response to seeds of honest and proved that it's pure Dharma. So what the Guru Dharma history says is, he says, like, the objections to Nyingma were written by Mikyo Dorje, and the response were also written. He's saying that the objections and the response were both written by Mikyo Dorje. This is a very peculiar way of describing it. So we knew that it said that Mikyo Dorje was the responder. He knew that. And because he knew that Mikyo Dorje had written the response was also written by Mikyo Dorje, and the rejection, or the repudiation of the Nyingma was also written by them. If you have to think the responses were true, then you have to say that the objections were not written by Mikyo Dorje, because it clearly says in the response to the answers that he didn't write them. So I don't know what this really comes down to. Now, there was also a 19th century Dzogchen Khenpo Padmavajra, who wrote the first dawn of scripture and logic, a response to objections to the ancient translation Nyingma literature. And he says that questions from the doubt of not realizing by Mikyo Dorje. He says that because Mikyo Dorje did not realize the nature and had doubt, he asked questions of the ancient translation Nyingma. And it's saying that when Mikyo Dorje asked questions from the doubt of not realizing, he responded the responses to these actions by Soktopa. And so the Soktopa wrote a response to this, right? And then later, so I've spoken about the explanation given by the Dzogchen Master Pema Vajra. There's another one that is probably a little more. So I'll show that one. I'll show that another one. There's more that I'll show you tomorrow. There is also Jamgun Banamja's string of the Vajradulas, a supplementary expression of the natural mind. And this is one of his 3 cycles of the natural mind, a supplementary exception of the natural mind. And this is responses to objection and the 3 questions about the topic of liberation through investigation. So what this is saying is, I don't need to read every single word. I forgot to present them. I don't need to read them all exactly, but to give it to you, say that you first of all started practicing the Shentong view, right? First you held the Shentong view, and later, when you saw the ornament of Najargana Sat by the Sera Jetsun, because of that, you were unable to prove your own traditions. When you saw that, you were not able to stand up to that logic, and you're unable to prove your own tradition. And so your own Shentong view kind of weakened, and you had to take up the consequential school. And so you were unable to, you're using different methods, and you're unable to hold your own tradition. And because you're unable to uphold your own tradition in your own school, then you like have a shameless, you're kind of, so in the superior tulku, so you can probably do whatever you want, but for other people, it's really strange to be unable to hold your own teaching. So this is kind of a sarcastic response. And the object of his sarcasm is probably Mikyo Dorje. But he doesn't actually say Mikyo Dorje's name. You understand? And Mikyo Dorje emphasized the Rongtong or consequentialist view. And likewise, in his works, Mikyo Dorje wrote, in his normal works, this is his usual works, in his other works, he wrote a few asides that are questioning the Nyingma and the dialogue with Gyatun, the Nyingma Tantras. In particular, there's this fake letter refuting the Nyingma and the dialogue of Gyatun Jadrao and Mikyo Dorje. So this said, and so for what he says is this, that many people spoke badly of Mikyo Dorje. There are many people from the secret mantra Nyingma tradition, there are many, as well as many from the Ka tradition, who said that Mikyo Dorje did not uphold the previous Karmapa's views. And said many things that were not true. Likewise, within the collected works of Mikyo Dorje, there's a text called the Dialogue of the Gyatun Jadrawa. And so this is a set of question and answer. And the question given by Gyatun Jadrawa was, in Kangpo, there is a statue of the Wrathful Guru made by Terden Sangye Lingpa that's there. And they say that you destroyed it. They said, not only just destroy it, but or they say it's destroyed, and they said the person who said it should be destroyed was you. And so he asked, is this true or not? And he asked Mikyo Dorje. And the response of Mikyo Dorje goes, that statue of the Wrathful Guru made by Terden Sangye Lingpa, the statue from the very beginning was already cracked and broken in many places. Later, when we restored the Tselakang, and so at that point, when they did the restoration, the statue was done that. But until it had already been restored, I didn't hear anything. So it's not at all true to say that I'd done this, because after everything had been restored, then Mikyo Dorje said, no, not until that point anyone says things. So the statue had been destroyed during the restoration, and only afterwards did Mikyo Dorje. So if you look at this time, then during Mikyo Dorje's life, you can see that Mikyo Dorje was. The people said Mikyo Dorje was. People who criticized Mikyo Dorje continually, saying that he disliked the Nyingma and that they harmed the Mikyo Dorje things. In particular, so we say that the basis of the practice lineage of the Karma Kansan is the Kagyu, but our Dharma practitioners are mostly come from the Nyingma tradition, such as Bernak Chen and Palden Lama, they probably come from this, and Damchen and Xinqiang also come from the Nyingma tradition. And so later it's often said within the Kansan tradition that Mikyo Dorje had objected to the Nyingma. So this is very frequently said within the Kamsan school. Because it became so widespread, there are many Kamsan people who didn't have much, who hadn't studied much, and who didn't really have a good understanding. What they would say is many people would say that many of our ancestral practices were Nyingma, and then look at them badly. It's like fifth. And look at we talked about Kama Shimba, the reincarnation of Palkon Lotsa. So later, I think during the times of the 9th and the 10th Karmapas, there are many in the time of the 9th and 10th Karmapas, there are many people who had said that the Karmapa had objected to the Nyingma school. And so for this reason, so if even within the Kamsa school, if this is the situation, then for other people of other lineages did not know that the letter objecting to the Nyingma was not written by Mika Dorje, for them to not to know, it's understandable because even the people in the karma constant lineage don't know this. And so because of this, there are many different events and problems that occurred. So generally, Gyal Mika Dorje, whether he taught the Shentong view or not, I'll speak about that later. It's not the right context for that today. But in terms about the reason, the proofs, whether or not he wrote that letter objecting to the Nyingma, the reasons why he did not write that, and the proofs for why he didn't write that, I've already explained. So next, I should give a summary of that. I think give a summary and some thoughts about it because of time today. Others don't have time to read it, so I'll share some thoughts about that tomorrow. So we will leave it there today. Thank you. So now we recite the dedication prayers.